Zack Martin, alcoholic. I have a confession. So my son's playing the first game of his baseball tournament tonight, and my wife is texting me like the play-by-play while we're here. And I had this really good plan that I was gonna. I've got a smartwatch, and I was just gonna periodically check it. Like I'm checking my time, but like really, I was gonna see what was going on in the game. I thought better of it before I got up here, and I put my watch on Do Not Disturb. So by the end of this talk, we need to stand back. Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Are we good?
Lawrence is better at this than me. All right, I'll try.
It's probably for the best. But yeah, so by the time this is over, I should hopefully have a slew of text messages and then know the outcome of the game.
That should be.
I
Maybe about right.
I probably could have managed that myself. So yeah, I have a home group. It's the Principals Group of Raleigh. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. at St. Joseph's. Is that right? Catholic Church. I think I said St. Mark's last night. St. Joseph's. I checked before I came up here because I think I got it wrong. I spoke last night and I think I got it wrong. But yeah, Tuesdays we have a discussion meeting, a closed discussion meeting out of AA literature. And then on Thursdays, we have an open speaker meeting. There's a fifth Thursday, we have a workshop. I have a sobriety date. It's May the 7th of 2007. And that's it. No, that's not it. I'm not done, but I think that's the stuff I'm supposed to say. So just for the sake of time, I'll tell you what my goal is here. It's to try to get sober by 7:45, and that's for a few reasons. One is I know Steve's going to report back to my wife, and apparently she'll just be able to hear this on the internet. And I never get to the point where I get to mention her. So, I mean, even if I don't, I'm going to go ahead and say her name's Gina. Love of my life, really. And so that's covered even if I don't make it. But also for the sake of time, I'm going to skip a bit past my childhood for a few reasons. Number one, honestly, it has nothing to do with the reason that I became an alcoholic. I grew up in a loving home. I had everything that I needed, certainly, and a lot of what I wanted. And I don't think that I could have asked for more. I certainly was capable and did ask for more, but that wasn't something that I realized, I think, until I got here. But what happened was, I think I had a pretty happy childhood up until whenever it is that people stop having happy childhoods, maybe like middle school, and that feeling that people describe, that I hear people describe about feeling like not a part of, something like that happened to me. And I don't know exactly when, but I'm going to say like middle school. And the best way that I can describe the way that I felt was it felt like people were always, like if I sat at the front of a classroom, which I was in fact forced to do several times because I wasn't necessarily the most attentive student, I always felt like people were just like staring at the back of my head. It felt like everybody was looking at me and judging me. And I've come to realize that it's very unlikely that that's the case. Because people generally, from what I've seen, are thinking probably more about themselves the same way that I was. But that didn't stop me from thinking that way and from feeling that way and ultimately from acting accordingly. I guess I was a bit of a loner in high school. I was the kid that ate lunch by himself, and truly just by choice, because I felt like I wasn't a part of, and I was never bullied. There was never any of that. I mean, I think honestly, people were as kind as they can be for some people that are in high school. I didn't have any kind of bad experiences like that, but I certainly didn't feel like I belonged. Went off to college. I'm going to skip past my first run at college and get right to the drinking. Basically, I'll say this. What happened was I went to college. I'm from Raleigh. I went to college in Greensboro, and I did not have a successful first attempt. I didn't have a successful second attempt, but I'll get to that. But I had a lot of fun, and what happened was the things that I was doing to have a lot of fun. What I realized, and I think this is what led me to my kind of my thoughts and feelings in relationship with alcohol, was like the things that I was doing to have fun. I felt like I can't do these things forever. Like, this isn't what, number one, they're illegal. But number two, these aren't things that adults do. What I'm going to have to do eventually is I'm going to have to grow up and I'm going to have to start drinking. Like, that's what this is leading to. I wasn't there yet. I was still, 18, 19, 20. But I ended up leaving school because I wasn't going to class, and I ended up coming back to school because I hated living at home. And so I remember coming back that second time, and I moved into, it was one of these situations where you don't know your roommate until you get there. And I moved in and I met the guy. I was 20 years old, he was 21. And he introduced himself, and like he basically led with, hey, I'm 21, and if there's anything that you need, I'd be happy to help you out. And I mean, he probably just was blatantly did offer to buy me alcohol. And I remember thinking, that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind. Also, we lived a block from the liquor store. And so eventually, and it didn't take long, a matter of days, I don't know. But I took him up on his offer. And what I started doing was I'd get these big half gallons of the cheapest vodka that they had. And the reason for that, number one, I was poor, but number two, I never liked the taste of any of it. I never got around to the point where I liked the taste of any kind of alcohol. So it didn't really matter to me whether it was top shelf or bottom shelf or whatever. I wasn't gonna like it. I wasn't drinking it because I liked the taste. I was drinking it because I liked what it did for me. But I'd get these half gallons of vodka, and me and my friends on the weekends, we would drink, and I could share. It was like you'd picture it. Like I was a generous person sharing my alcohol. We'd all have fun. And it wasn't the first time that I drank, but what I came to realize, I didn't have one of those experiences the first time I drank that sometimes you hear people talk about, where it's like first drink, boom, I can feel it like go down in my stomach and this is it. I realized that the reason that I didn't have that experience the first time I drank was I did have that experience. What it takes for me to get to that experience is more than I'd had to drink up until that point. It takes me like 8 or 10 to get there. But once I'm there, it does the same thing that I think that it does for everybody else. And once I experienced that, which really I'd say the first time I experienced that was maybe that year. I knew that it was for me. I knew that, what happened was that feeling that I had before, where I felt like people were always staring at me, or people were judging me, or whatever it was. And not only that, I also felt like they were doing those things and judging me and all that, but like that they had criticisms, right? That they didn't like what they saw. I think I felt like when I drank, I still felt like everybody was looking at me, but I thought they're loving what they're seeing. And they want to hear everything that I have to say, and they would just, all of it. And it was kind of as much as it was the exact opposite of how I had felt for years. And so when I felt that way, it started and very quickly became what I lived for, to feel that way. So something that started out as a thing on the weekends became a thing that we'd do halfway through the week. And honestly, the first few months or so of my drinking was me just kind of filling in the gaps, from going like I'm drinking every, once a week to I'm drinking every night. And then, cool, I'm doing good. Tom. I don't know if I'm doing good outside of that. But filling in the gaps, and I started drinking every night. And the same experience that I'd had before kind of became my experience again, where drinking was what I lived for, and it became the most important thing in my life, and because of that, everything else was secondary. And when I say secondary, it was virtually non-existent. I didn't care about it. I didn't care about going to class. I didn't care about calling my parents once a week even. I mean, I would constantly get, like, my mother was a quadriplegic. She had polio as a child. And I remember being in my apartment once in Greensboro, and my roommate came and she was like, somebody's here to see you. And I went and opened the door, and it was my mother, and she'd driven all the way from Raleigh because I hadn't answered the phone in, I don't know how long it had been, days or weeks or whatever. And I didn't think much of that, I don't think, at that time. I think I thought a little more of it when I got sober, and I certainly thought a lot more of the harm that I caused in doing that once I became a father. But yeah, everything else was, I mean, wasn't just like on the back seat. I just didn't care. What I cared about was when was the next time that I'm going to get to have a drink. And so I filled out that semester. I came back to Greensboro because my housing wasn't tied to me being in school. It was just tied to somebody paying the rent. And my parents agreed to send me back because I was clearly miserable at home. And they sent me back, and they were like, get a job. And I remember getting back to Greensboro that January, and getting a job wasn't my goal, for sure. But what became clear was that, like where before I feel like I had something holding me back from kind of living the way that I wanted to live. And when I say that, living the way I wanted to live is like just drinking all the time. To now I didn't have that. I had nothing holding me back. And so I realized a few things. I realized that I've never been a morning person. To this day, I'm not a morning person. I've tried. But that there was a time in my life when I was a morning person. That's when I learned to start drinking in the morning. And because it gave me, number one, it gave me a reason to get out of bed. I mean, I'd wake up and we'd just go like, oh, I can start drinking now. And then I'd start drinking, and I'd go like, I love mornings. This is the best. So I started doing that, and I had these definitions of what I called like drinking and then getting drunk, and they were two separate things. Certainly didn't line up with what the law is, but in my mind they did. And so I would drink during the day, and then at night I'd get drunk. And I did that for a while, and my parents became really insistent that I get a job, so I came up with a plan for that. I'd start going in these places and asking for applications, and I'd fill it out, I'd take a picture of it, I'd send it to my parents, and say, look, I'm doing it, I'm doing the deal, I'm working hard, I'm putting these applications in. It's just not, I mean, nobody's hiring. What can you do? I walked into this, there was this Chinese restaurant that had a sign in the window that said, drivers wanted, and I said, I don't want to do that, but I definitely want to get one of those applications. So I don't know if you're aware of this. I certainly wasn't aware of this at the time, and I don't know if this is kind of across the board, but Chinese restaurants, or certainly this Chinese restaurant, didn't have like the standard application process that you would go through. So I don't think they had an application at all, I mean, honestly. In fact, I'm fairly certain they didn't. But I went in and asked for an application. A guy came out from the back who I later learned was the owner of the restaurant. And he asked me two questions. He said, number one, do you have a car? I said, yes, I have a car. And his second question, which like really caught me off guard, was, can you start tomorrow morning? And I don't know, like I'm someone that's pretty good at lying, but like it just, when I say it caught me off guard, it caught me off guard. And so I started delivering Chinese food. And that was how I spent the next, until I went back to school, and then ended up trying to get sober. And it's not the best job for an alcoholic. I say that it's not the best job. It was a great job. I loved it. Really, I did. It's not the best job. It's not in the best interest of the public in the world for an alcoholic to be delivering Chinese food. I will say that. But ultimately, it was a lot of fun. I always had these rules. I mean, growing up, I went through like the DARE program, and I always thought, the thing I always heard was like, don't do drugs, and I thought, don't do drugs, or don't do too much drugs, or whatever it was about. But also, they never said anything about that, like about being careful with drinking. That's why I think alcoholism kind of caught me by surprise, because I didn't think anything like this was going to happen to me. The thing that I knew was don't drink and drive. That was the thing that I knew, and I was able to, that was kind of my rule. It was my rule for a little while. The way I kind of came to, what my rule became was don't get drunk and drive. And a few things that I realized is, number one, my definition of drunk is very different from the law's definition of drunk. And so when I started doing that job, my whole idea was like, all right, don't get drunk and drive. But clearly, I was going to drink and drive. And so that's what I did. I mean, nothing really changed, except I tried not to get too drunk while I was working. And I had a good time. I mean, it's not like delivering Chinese food, again, at this place at least, it's not like working at a pizza place where you gotta like work the register and make pizza and then deliver. I literally would just sit at a table until they'd call my name, and I'd get in the car and drive it and hand it to them and try and make change. And that was it. And it got slow in the summer. I'd hang out outside with the homeless guys, because it was, I don't know, I quickly realized that they were kind of like my people. I mean, I don't want to say I admired them, but ultimately some sort of a life like that became what my goal was, because it was clear that I wasn't going to have like any sort of romanticized like version of being an alcoholic, these things that I'd seen in movies. When that movie Leaving Las Vegas, I'm saying when that movie Leaving Las Vegas came out, I was probably 9 years old when that came out. When I saw that movie for the first time, I was already very much an alcoholic, and I remember thinking like, man, that's how you go out. Just sell it all, move to Vegas, fall in love with you know what? Just, that's the way to go out, and that's what I'll do. But unfortunately, I was never able to. Well, here's the deal. I was never able to keep more than $20 in my pocket, and that was the reason why. Every morning when I went to work, I had to borrow $20 to make change. That was the reason why I worked. I don't know how many days in a row, but there were no. I mean, certainly there were labor laws, but they weren't being adhered to at this place. If I wanted to work every day, I could work every day, and I did, because I had to, because I needed money to drink that night. So my days were like this. I'd go in the morning, I'd borrow $20 to make change. Occasionally they'd ask me why I have to keep doing this, and I'm sure I had a reason, or I didn't. But we'd get past that, and they'd let me borrow $20 to make change. And I'd start working, and I'd work all day. And when I say all day, I'd work from about like 11:15 in the morning to like 4:30. This was not hard work, except I did have to use a real map. But I'd get off at the end of the day, and I'd have $20 left. I'd have $20 left because I'd spend the rest of my money either on gas to get around, or what I was drinking to make it through the day. But pretty much at the end of every day, I'd have $20 left, and I'd go and I'd get a Subway sandwich. This was important. The reason that I would make sure to eat first was there was a longer than it should have been. There was an amount of time where I just kind of forgot to eat, because it was not. It just didn't seem important. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't like, oh, time to eat. I was just like, oh, time to drink. And what happened to me when I did that was I lost a whole lot of weight. Just when I went home, my parents could tell that something was very wrong. Even though I wasn't drinking, that was my big plan. Was if I don't want to seem like I have a problem, I should go home, and I shouldn't be drunk when I go home. I realized the first time I attempted that if I want to appear normal from now on, I need to have had something to drink, because if I haven't had something to drink, it's going to look bad. And so the first time I did that, they sat me down and had a talk with me and asked me what was going on. I think they thought I was on drugs, which I guess technically I was. But I just wasn't eating because I was drinking. But this guy, one of the homeless guys that would sit outside of China Walk, that's the name of the place I work. I remember him saying to me one day, like, "Hey man, you gotta eat." And that doesn't sound like much, but to me it was a revelation. I was like, you know what? You're right. I do. I should eat every day. But I realized if I didn't make that a priority, it wasn't going to happen. So before I started drinking, and when I say like drinking, before I started getting drunk when I got off work, the first thing I'd do is I'd stop at the Subway, get a Subway sandwich. I'd go to the gas station, I'd get a couple packs of cigarettes, and I'd get some Gatorade or something to drink with my vodka that night. And I'd go to the liquor store, I'd get a fifth of vodka. And my $20 was gone, which is why I had to work the next day. So I did that, and that was basically my life. I certainly noticed some things about my drinking. I noticed that, I'm going to try to get through this part quickly. Number one, I'd get in trouble when I drank. But what I realized, I would get in trouble because it was because I would drink too much, clearly. But what I determined was that I was buying these half gallons of vodka. And what I realized is that the trouble's in the bottom half of that half gallon of vodka. And so if I didn't buy a half gallon of vodka, I'm not getting into trouble because I'm not drinking into that trouble part of the bottle. And so I stopped that entirely, and I started buying fifths because I don't know like the math, but it seemed to me like that's the top half of the bottle, which is perfect. There's no trouble in the fifth of vodka. There is. So what I came to realize is that if I drink that too fast, I'm figuring out a way to get some more to drink that night. If I drink that too slow, I'm not sleeping that night. So it was, as much as it was a plan that made sense, I'd get myself in trouble. The other thing that I realized is I always thought when I'd start drinking, I could always look at that bottle and I could look at a spot on it. I mean, I could tell you the spot on it, and I could say, this is how much I need to drink tonight. This is how much I need to drink tonight, not how much I'm going to drink tonight. This is how much I need to drink tonight. Once I get there, like I'm going to be okay. Like that's enough. That's the spot that I need to be. Maybe I'll drink a little bit more, but that's all I really need. And I remember so many times getting to that spot on that bottle and thinking to myself, like, man, tonight I have just miscalculated where that spot is. That spot's a couple inches lower. And then I'd get there, and I don't know. I mean, I blacked out pretty much every night that I drank, so I'd wake up the next morning and I could swear I'd have like a bottle of vodka somewhere around that still had something in it, and I'd look around and I would find all these empty bottles, which if I was a smart man, I would have started, keeping track of that or maybe even throwing them away. But I didn't really know how the nights ended, and I was just exhausted. Okay. So I ended up trying to get sober. I'm going to skip past some pieces here. I ended up trying to get sober because my mom made me, ultimately. that was it. I tried to go back to school, and I couldn't, as much as it was important to me to get to class and to do these things, I was incapable of doing it. And I kind of had gone too far. So the reasons that I ended up going, as far as I can remember, there were two main reasons. Number one, I knew I'd screwed it up again, and I'd screwed it up too much, and maybe this was my last chance to fix everything, because this was going to be the thing that was going to fix everything. Like if I could get to school, if I could whatever. I'm drinking so much because the circumstances in my life are so poor, and if I can fix those, I'm not going to quit drinking, but I'm not going to have to drink as much. I'm not going to have to drink the way that I drink. So it was critical to me that I make this semester of school work, and I tried everything that I could to make it work, and I found that I couldn't. The other reason that I ended up agreeing to go to this place was because when she called me, she said, there's a place in Wilmington, they've got a bed for you. And I remember that word bed just standing out because I had a bed, I slept a lot, but I just felt just so tired. And I remember thinking, like, I'll go to this place, I'll get some rest. This will be a good thing, and I'll figure it out. I don't know what I thought I was going to figure out. It didn't involve trying to stop drinking, but it certainly involved trying to like turn my life around. So I ended up at this treatment center. The things that I remember about that treatment center, they had, we have them here, okay. They had the 12 steps and they had the 12 traditions up on the walls. They were huge, the biggest I've ever seen. They would gesture at them. They would talk about how important they are. We'd go and we'd sit in circles in groups, and people would talk about like their trauma, and they'd cry, and I would sit there and go like, I'm good, thank you. We'd go to AA meetings. Well, we went to one outside AA meeting, but the majority of the AA meetings that I went to there were like this. You'd sit in a circle with all the other residents of the treatment center, or the ones that had decided to go to this AA meeting, and we'd go around and you basically would talk about, like, you'd go like, I really want to drink, or I really want to do cocaine, or whatever your thing was. And you'd say that, and people would go, that's so brave of you, and you'd say thank you. And so I thought, well, that's what AA is. I certainly don't need that. I can do that all on my own. But I left there. The one thing I got from that place was they talked about the way that I drank, like my relationship with alcohol, the things that I thought when I drank, that thing where I'd go like, I'm going to get to this part of the bottle and it's going to be all right, that thing where bad things keep happening. Basically what they convinced me of was that I needed to stop drinking. What they said was don't drink a day at a time. What I heard was don't ever drink again. Because I get what you're trying to do here. You're trying to say, okay, don't drink a day at a time, but they're never like, until like do that for 6 months and then we'll taper back on. There was none of that. They just meant don't ever drink again. And I thought, I'm not a simple man. I get what you're getting at. I can do this. I can do the never drinking again. Because it's important and it's the thing that's going to work. So I left that place and I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave here. I'm going to never drink again, and everything's going to get better. And so I left there, and my plan was this. I was going to move back in with my parents because really the biggest problem that I had as I saw it was that I was going to end up like around bad people and they were going to get me drunk. So if I stayed away from those people, I wouldn't get drunk. If I didn't get drunk, I'd be able to get everything like lined up, back on track, and I could fix my life. Once my life was fixed, then I wouldn't feel the way that I feel, and everything would be okay. So I tried to do that, and it didn't work. I remember being out of treatment for a couple of weeks, and I was sitting on my parents' couch at home, and it was a Saturday night, and I remember thinking about like my relationship with alcohol, not my relationship with alcohol and that like, oh, it's a terrible thing, like bad things happen, and I'm insane when it comes to none of that. I remember thinking about how much I loved alcohol, because I loved it. Like I loved it like you love a woman. Like I loved it, and I missed it, and I felt like I missed it, and I just wanted to be around it again. And the thought that came to my head was, what I want to do is I want to smell it. I just want to take a whiff of it because it's been so long, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to get some beer. I'm going to crack it open. I'm going to smell it. I didn't plan on drinking, but at the same time, I didn't think any further than that. I didn't go like, okay, that's a bad idea. I thought that far, and then I got up and I went to the store. I got 40-ounce beers, and I came home, and I opened it up, and it smelled good, and I drank it, and I drank the other one. I went back several times that night, and then like it just kept happening the way that it always happens. Like I intended to get sober, but what kept happening was I'd go like, oh man, last night I drank beer, and beer's not my thing. Tonight, like if I'm gonna drink again, I need to really drink again. So I just kept kind of one-upping myself until I couldn't take it anymore. And I think that's the other thing that maybe happened at that treatment center was it in some sense ruined my drinking, and I had this idea that I was really going to be able to do it, and I was going to be able to get sober, and it was going to fix my life, and things were going to be okay. I just needed to be able to kind of make it happen. And I couldn't make it happen. I couldn't figure out how to make it happen. And so I tried everything that I could think to try, and I did this for quite some time. I went to like those group things they send you to when you get a DWI, and you sit in a circle, and there's a guy there or a lady there, and they run the group. I went to a therapist. I went to a psychiatrist. Like I don't hand abuse. That stuff was a nightmare. Because if you've ever had this experience where like you want to drink but you can't drink, like I never figured out a way around it. I'll tell you what I did. So what I would do is I'd shove my face in a pillow and I would scream as loud as I could, and then when that was done, nothing was better, and I'd try to make it the next day, and eventually I wasn't taking that stuff long enough and I could drink again, and it was kind of like the darkest, like when I was even when I was drinking and before and things were bad. Even when I was like, I'm okay with this, I'm okay that this is going to be the thing that kills me. Even when I was okay with that, it wasn't as bad as this. It wasn't as bad as kind of like the back and forth. And the thing people that aren't alcoholics, I think, maybe have a hard time grasping is that like this is what happened to me. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd say, okay, today's the day, like today is the day that I'm never going to drink again. Like this is it. It's not like I wasn't sitting there going like, oh, you're kidding yourself, or like this is, I meant it. Like I meant like anything good ever happening for me for the rest of my life was entirely relied on me not drinking starting today and then just forever. I never got that one day at a time thing back then. But man, by the end of the day, like I could just feel the weight of forever on my shoulders, and I'd know that I couldn't, like, what's gonna happen is this. I'm gonna not drink. I'm gonna drink tonight, and then I'm gonna start again tomorrow. I'm going to start, and I'm really going to mean it. And I meant it so much. I had this file on my computer that was called. It was titled Sobriety Date, and I had to keep a file on my computer because it changed so much. I had a hard time remembering when it was, but I knew, like, when I'd start drinking, I knew that like tomorrow is the day. Like tomorrow was the day. So that night I'd start drinking. I'd go in there. I'd change the day to the next day, and I'd go, okay. This is it. I mean it. So what ended up happening, all right, this is me getting sober at 7:45, Steve. What happened was May the 6th of 2007, my parents kicked me out of their house because I couldn't stop drinking. And they ended up taking me to a detox in Raleigh. And I woke up the next morning on the morning of May the 7th in that detox, and I remember walking to the kitchen for breakfast, and I remember looking around, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this is as good as it gets. Like, there's no, like, all that I'm never gonna drink again stuff you were trying was like, you're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself, because that's not going to happen. You meant it. Like, I meant it. I was going to do it, and I couldn't do it. And I couldn't do it again, and I couldn't do it again, and I couldn't do it again, and again, and again. And I thought, the best you're ever going to have, you're going to keep ending up in places like this is my life. Like, this is my life until I die, right? There's nothing better than this. This is as good as it gets. because as much as I want to and as hard as I try to, I cannot stop drinking. And it's not going to happen. I always feel like when people talk about the first step, that it's this thing where you go, there's so much that I hear that I kind of go like, man, that's a rough way to go about this first step, because I'll hear people say things like, I can't drink again. I promise you I can drink again. The first step for me was a very dark step. It was not, there's no hope in the first step. There's hope in the second step. There's no hope for me in the first step. And the good thing about that, though, is that that's what I need the first step to be. Because without being in that place, I'm going to do nothing else that's asked of me next. Because the things that are asked of me next, while they're not, I mean, some of them aren't like necessarily the worst things in the world. They're not something that I'm going to volunteer to do. When we're talking about the things that we do in the rest of the steps, I was not someone that came in here because I wanted to be a better person. I did not want that at all. I came in here because I couldn't stop drinking. And honestly, when I realized that I couldn't stop drinking, there was nothing that I could do to get around that. The only thing that I had not tried was this, and this was the only thing that people had told me had worked. And I still was like, nope, I can tell you why that's not going to work. I had a reason. I mean, my reason was clear. It was like, oh, step 2, step 3, that's not going to work for me. This works for people that believe in God. And I thought, that's my problem. My problem is God. My problem was not God. My problem was step 1. I didn't need a God as long as I could keep myself sober. As long as I could make this work, what's the reason that I would need any of the rest of this? And so it was for me to be in that place, to think that, to know that, as hard as it was and as dark as it was what was key for me to do any of the rest of this. And so that's what I did was the rest of this. And it worked. I think that's the good news, is that was my experience, is that it worked. And I thought best case scenario, what was going to happen is I'm going to come in here and like those meetings in the treatment center, if you're like me, if you have the relationship with alcohol that I do, you're never going to be okay with not drinking again. You're never going to be okay with that. Nobody in here could be okay with that. Nobody in here could be sitting here going like, oh, I'm happy I'm not drinking today. All right. But what I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous is we were all in here. Maybe even we weren't drinking, but nobody was happy about it. Everybody had to want to drink. If they were like me, you wanted it. And we'd pat each other on the back and we'd say, like, it's going to be okay, buddy. And you go, yeah, sure is. It's not. That was the thing I knew. It's not going to be okay. I'm never going to get over this. I'm never going to get over feeling this way about alcohol. So what ended up happening, and I'll tell you how it happened, and then I'm going to talk about my wife. What ended up happening was about a year later, I'd been in here, I'd been doing the deal to the best of my ability. I mean, I certainly not perfectly, but I don't think it takes perfectly in here. It takes me doing the best that I can, and that's what I was doing, because I knew this was all that was left. But I remember I was driving around Dorothea Dix, and I had that Chinese food money in my pocket for the first time in a long time. I had $20, and I remember thinking, I did my math that I do. I said, $20 equals 1 Subway sandwich, 2 packs of cigarettes, a couple Gatorades, a fifth of vodka. And I remember thinking that, and I remember thinking, my next thought was, that's crazy. And then the next thought, and the thing that really did it for me, was that I thought, I don't want to do that. And I meant it. I didn't want to do that. I remember laughing out loud. I was by myself in my truck, laughing out loud like a crazy person, that I felt that way. Because I didn't think you were telling the truth about that. You couldn't be telling the truth about that. But when I realized that you did, it opens everything up. I mean, I think as much as there's so much that can happen, and so much so many good things have happened in my life, and maybe I can get to them in just a second. That was the start, and I think maybe that's the best, because the thing that I didn't, the thing that I'd resigned myself to was that what we get in here in Alcoholics Anonymous is some sort of kind of like a second-rate life. Because as good as things can get, as good as things could be, if I get all of the things that I want, all the things that I think are going to make me okay, it's never going to be as good as it could be. Because what I really want is I want all of those things, and I want to be able to go home at night, and I want to be able to drink as much as I can, basically. That's what I really want. So even when good things happen, they're not really good, because what I want is I want that, and I want to be able to drink. And when bad things happen, they're even worse, because they're bad, and I really want to drink. And to have that taken away, to have that desire to drink taken away, I think to this day is one of the biggest miracles of my life. And it happened, and then another thing I'll say, I know this isn't everybody's experience, but my experience has been that it has not come back. So my life today is a lot different. I remember getting sober and thinking, like, I want to be like sober 20 years. Those people look like they got it figured out. They're like okay with this. And what I didn't realize is that if you're sober for 20 years, you're also like 20 years older. So that happened, and that continues to happen. I keep getting sober longer, but I keep getting older too. So that's the bad news. But the other thing that I realized, and I think I realized pretty on, is that it doesn't take being sober 20 years to get what this program has to offer. I can, because I got it pretty fast, and I can not get it today. I can not get it just as fast today, as long as I'm not kind of putting the work in. Good things happen. Went back to school. I got married. We have a kid. He's playing baseball right now. The game is probably over, and I'll let you know how it turned out after the meeting. I don't know, just like normal people stuff is what I did. We did those things. We bought a house. We go on vacations. We whatever. But I think maybe the reason that I'm still here tonight has nothing to do with the fact that I did any of this perfectly, but what I've tried to do, even when all of those things were happening, because those things can make it tough. I mean, having a kid can make it tough to keep doing this. What I tried to do was to make sure that regardless of what's happening in my life, that I do keep doing this, that this is still a priority. Because I'll tell you, when I came in here and figured out that I didn't have a way out of this, that there wasn't, that there was nothing to do that I could do to stay sober, and then I found this and this worked, it was pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing thing. But what has not happened since then is I haven't found an alternative to this. I've got nothing else. Like this is what I've got. And my understanding of how this works is that this works the same way drinking worked. If I'm drinking, I'm getting drunk. If I'm doing this, I'm getting what this has to offer. But if I'm not doing this, I'm not getting what this gives. And so it's pretty important, because as bad as this sounds, my fallback plan to Alcoholics Anonymous is drinking. And it's that it might be that leaving Las Vegas thing. I've got a little bit more money now. I can maybe pull it off, but I don't want to do it. I don't, because the life that I have today continues to amaze me. And good, I'm done. I appreciate you asking me to speak, Paige, and thank you, everyone.